There is a city in the north of Ukraine where the clocks all stopped on the same day. Walk its streets and you'll find apartment blocks with the curtains still hanging in the windows, a school with textbooks open on the desks, a swimming pool, a supermarket, a hospital, all of it silent, all of it empty. And in the middle of the city stands a fairground with a bright yellow Ferris wheel that never opened to the public. It was meant to open on the 1st of May 1986. It never got the chance. Because on the 26th of April, a few kilometres away, one of humanity's worst catastrophes was unfolding, and within 36 hours, this city of nearly 50,000 people was ordered out. Not over months, not over weeks. In a matter of hours, every single resident was gone, and no one has lived here since. This is Pripyat, and to understand how an entire modern city was wiped off the map in a single afternoon, and what is quietly living in its ruins today, you have to go back to one catastrophic night and then walk in, past the fences, into one of the most contaminated places on Earth. Let's start at the edge. Around the disaster site, the authorities drew a circle on the map, a boundary roughly 30 kilometres out in every direction. They call it the Exclusion Zone. It covers well over 2,000 square kilometres, and to pass into it, even today, you go through a checkpoint. Beyond that barrier is a landscape that looks at first almost peaceful. Forests, overgrown roads, abandoned villages being slowly pulled apart by the trees. But the quiet is deceptive, because parts of the ground you're walking on will stay dangerous for longer than human civilization has existed. To understand why, we have to go to the source, and it comes down to a single terrible night and a single reactor. In the early hours of the 26th of April 1986, engineers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant were running a safety test on reactor number 4. The details are technical, but the short version is this. The test went wrong. A fatal combination of a flawed reactor design and a series of human errors sent the power surging wildly out of control, and in the space of a few seconds, the reactor tore itself apart. The explosion blew the massive concrete and steel lid clean off the top of the reactor and punched a hole straight through the roof of the building. It flung burning radioactive material into the night sky and set the exposed core on fire, a fire that would burn for days, pouring a plume of radioactive particles high into the air, where the wind carried it across Ukraine, across Europe, across the world. It remains to this day the worst nuclear disaster in human history. And here is one of the cruelest details of the whole story. For a day and a half, the people of Pripyat, less than 3 kilometres away, were told almost nothing. Life carried on. Children went to school. People hung out their washing. Some, hearing there'd been an accident at the plant, reportedly gathered to watch the strange coloured glow over the reactor in the distance, with no idea they were standing in a lethal fog of radiation. It was not until roughly 36 hours after the explosion that the evacuation was finally ordered. And when it came, it was absolute. Residents were told to take only what they needed for a few days. Leave the pets, leave the furniture, you'll be back soon. Over 1,000 buses rolled into the city, loaded up nearly 50,000 people and drove them away. They were never allowed to return. That lie, a few days, is why Pripyat is frozen exactly as it was. The meals left on tables, the toys left on floors, a whole city caught in the middle of an ordinary spring afternoon and simply switched off. But evacuating the people was only the beginning, because that fire was still burning, still spewing radiation, and someone had to put it out. Someone had to clean it up. They were called the liquidators. Over the months and years that followed, an estimated 600,000 people, firefighters, soldiers, miners, engineers, ordinary workers, were sent into the disaster zone to fight an invisible enemy. The first firefighters on the roof that night had no idea what they were truly dealing with. Many received catastrophic doses of radiation. Some were dead within weeks, their bodies so irradiated they were buried in sealed coffins. And then there was the roof. Chunks of intensely radioactive graphite from the core had been blown onto the roof of the neighbouring reactor building, and they had to be cleared. The radiation there was so extreme that remote-controlled machines and robots sent up to do the job simply failed. Their electronics fried in seconds, so they used men. They called them bio-robots. Wrapped in makeshift lead aprons, each one would run out onto that roof for as little as 40 seconds, grab what they could, hurl it back down toward the reactor and run. 40 seconds was, in some spots, close to the maximum a human being could survive. It took thousands of them, one dreadful shift after another. What they were sealing away is a thing that still sits beneath the reactor today, and it may be the single most dangerous object ever created by human hands. When the core melted down, it fused with the concrete and sand around it into a monstrous, lava-like mass. It flowed down into the basement and hardened there, in a shape that earned it a grim nickname, the Elephant's Foot. In the years after the disaster, standing near it for just a few minutes would have been enough to kill you. It is still there, still deadly, sealed now beneath a colossal steel arch the size of a stadium that was slid into place over the entire reactor to contain what's left for the next 100 years. So this is the picture. A poisoned city, frozen in time. A ruined reactor entombed in steel. Ground that, in the worst areas, is expected to remain hazardous for thousands of years, with some estimates for the reactor site itself running to 20,000. It should be one of the most lifeless places on the planet, a dead zone in every sense, except it isn't. And this is the twist that almost no one sees coming. Go into the exclusion zone and you will not find a barren wasteland. You'll find a forest, a vast, green, thriving wilderness, alive with animals. Because when the 50,000 people left and the farms and the towns and the roads emptied out, nature moved into the space they left behind. And it didn't just survive, it flourished. The exclusion zone has become, by accident, one of the largest wildlife refuges in Europe. Wolves roam through it in numbers rarely seen anywhere else on the continent. Wild boar, deer, elk and lynx move through the abandoned villages. Bears have returned to a region they hadn't been seen in for over a century. Rare wild horses, released into the zone, now graze around the ruins. Birds nest in the cracks of the old reactor buildings. Trees push up through the floors of Pripyat's apartment blocks, and the yellow Ferris wheel now stands in a slowly growing forest. Now, this comes with a genuine scientific debate, and it's worth being honest about it. Scientists still argue over the finer effects of the radiation on these animals, whether individual creatures suffer higher rates of certain problems, whether some areas harm them more than others. The radiation is real, and it is not harmless. But the astonishing, uncomfortable headline is this: even with the radiation, the wildlife is booming. And the reason cuts right to the bone. It turns out that to the animals of Chernobyl, the danger of the radiation is still less than the danger we posed. Remove the hunting, the farming, the roads, the constant pressure of 500,000 humans, and even a poisoned forest becomes a paradise by comparison. Let that sit for a moment. The worst nuclear accident in history, a catastrophe that killed, that displaced tens of thousands, that scarred a nation, has also created one of the wildest, most animal-rich landscapes in all of Europe. Not because the radiation was good for nature, but because our absence was. And that is exactly what makes what happened next so chilling. Because the one force on Earth that could undo all of it is the one thing that made it possible in reverse, us coming back. In February 2022, as Russia invaded Ukraine, columns of troops crossed the border from Belarus and drove straight through the exclusion zone, seizing the Chernobyl plant on the very first day of the war. For weeks, the most contaminated ground on the planet, became a military front line. Soldiers reportedly dug trenches and foxholes directly into the Red Forest, the single most radioactive patch of soil in the entire zone, churning up decades-old contamination and, by some accounts, taking dangerous doses of radiation in the process. And in 2025, a Russian drone struck the new safe confinement itself, the giant steel arch, the 100-year tomb, the one structure holding the ruined core back from the world, damaged in an afternoon by the oldest problem of all. Think about what that means against everything you've just heard. For nearly 40 years, the thing that let this place heal was our absence. And the moment we returned, not with hazmat suits and dosimeters, but with tanks and trenches and drones, we started tearing at the very ground the wolves had reclaimed and battering the shield built to protect everyone downwind. The forest asked for one thing: to be left alone, and we couldn't even give it that. So that is Chernobyl, a silent city where a Ferris wheel waits forever for a crowd that will never come. A steel tomb the size of a stadium, holding back a fire that can never fully be put out, now scarred by a war it was never built to withstand. And all around it, spreading through the ruins of everything we built and abandoned, a wilderness that reclaimed the land the instant we were forced to leave it alone, and that we have already, restlessly, begun to disturb again. We think of Chernobyl as the story of what happens when our technology fails us, but walk through its forests, past the wolves and the overgrown streets, and the trees bursting through the concrete, and it starts to tell a second story, a quieter, stranger one, about how fast the world moves on the moment we step out of the way, and how little it takes for us to step back in. And Chernobyl is only one of them. All over the world there are places like this, cities, forests, islands, single-sealed doors, that humanity built or ruined or fled and then walled off from the rest of us. Some are poisoned, some are protected, some are simply forbidden, and one by one, that's exactly where we're going. So if you want to stand at the edge of the next one, subscribe and come with us. There are far stranger places still waiting, and we're only just getting started.